Story 1. I walked around Costco to fill up on samples. The only reason I had a Costco membership was that it came free as a job perk. If you are willing to eat everything and visit at the right time, you can get the equivalent of a light meal for free. Story 2. Due to family conflicts, we had our water meter removed from our property. I didn't have running water at my house for my entire junior year of high school. We did dishes at the gas station and relied on friends and relatives to use their showers and washing machines. I never take running water for granted. I know how precious a gift it is. Story 3. I slept under my desk at work, telling people the next day that I was working late and passed out. I couldn't afford the train ride home and was too afraid to hop a turnstile. Story 4. I stole toilet paper from work when I worked in retail because I was too broke to buy any and I was tired of having to take a shower every time I used the restroom. I would bring the empty roll back to work with me to swap it out for one of the full rolls the overnight cleaners had put out so nobody would suspect anything and think someone just used an excessive amount of toilet paper. This was many years ago in the early 2000s. Luckily, things improved for me, though I lived for a long time not just paycheck to paycheck but paycheck to the paycheck after next. It was a challenging time. Story 5. I drank a lot of water and hid rocks in my pockets to weigh an extra kilogram and a half to be eligible to donate blood. They paid €35 for it. Story 6. When I was in high school, I stopped on the way home from my fast food job and bought 16 cents worth of gas because it was all I had, and I had been running on empty for miles but didn't want to get fired. I made it home, though. Story 7. When I got my first job as a server in a restaurant, I ate leftover food that looked untouched. I was behind on rent and trying to save every penny I could. The dishwasher was in the same situation, so I wasn't alone. Story 8. Several years ago, I paid rent, utilities, and put a little gas in my car. I had exactly 1 nickel left. I walked around the parking lots of Walmart and the nearby strip mall, finding enough change on the ground to buy a 6-pack of ramen noodles to eat for the week. Story 9. I walked along the sidewalk until I found enough coins to pay for a can of tuna so my cat and I could eat. Story 10. I worked one night at a strip club and earned $10, which I used for gas to get to my job interview. I never told my ex-husband about it because we were together at the time, and he wasn't employed. He didn't even make an effort to find a job. Almost a year later, I left him. It was the best decision I ever made. Story 11. These stories people are telling are not pathetic. They are stories of resilient individuals who can survive. It is difficult when you are going through it, I have been there, but all these individuals are still alive and thriving. Pathetic is something else, but it is not this. Story 12. I sold my TV for gas to get to work. I am counting pennies at a McDonald's drive-thru. There are too many things to count. Story 13. My partner and I had a moment that measured our struggle. We accidentally dropped a 20-cent coin in our toilet about a year after we got together. It wouldn't flush, but neither of us was willing to retrieve it. It became our indicator of hardship. Nothing was ever that bad if we didn't have to remove that coin from the toilet for food. We had to do it once. We also replaced the coin. Story 14. I smiled when the only Christmas gift my dad gave me was an extra-large men's shirt he received for free in the mountains. I was a 10-year-old girl. Story 15. When I was in high school, I did not have a job. Some friends made a gross concoction with drinks and sauces at the restaurant table, and I happily accepted $5 to drink it. More seriously, later on, I drove on a flat tire for a bit, simply pumping it up and then driving to wherever I needed to go. Another time, I was having a difficult moment and talked with the college counselor. When the meeting ended, I asked him if I could have $5 for gas, because otherwise my car would not make it back. He gave me $10, if I remember correctly. Counselor Mike was a great help for that. Story 16. I felt a sense of pity from watching people create videos of themselves giving money to homeless individuals to appear generous. Story 17. Not filling my prescriptions. I couldn't afford my prescriptions, so I acquired them illegally from a stranger who filled theirs but never took them. I got a better medication plan, and now I can usually afford it. However, I have stockpiled my medications and I don't spend money on them if the price is too high. I have walked out of the pharmacy after they told me my prescriptions were $150. I return in a month when either the price is covered or I can afford to spend money on them. Story 18. I worked in a hospital and used to have free crackers and butter from the cafeteria salad bar for dinner. Honestly, it's quite delicious. Story 19. I have been skipping many meals, sometimes going multiple days without eating. I sold my grandparents' and parents' wedding rings to pay the mortgage. I work 3 jobs to cover expenses. I am currently living without a refrigerator because I cannot afford to fix it. However, I just received a promotion at my main job, which comes with a raise that is significant enough that I am hoping to quit at least one of my other jobs and reduce my hours at the other. I am so excited to finally get some rest. Story 20. Not my story, but I know a girl from college who desperately needed money to pay her father's medical bills. She was direct messaged on Instagram by a broker who offered her $9,000 in cash if she flew to Dubai to be used as entertainment for multiple men at a yacht party, followed by being available for the rest of the week for the Arab man who hired her. She told me that while in Dubai, they had her perform intimate acts with a Finnish girl they also hired, had her smoke marijuana, drink alcohol, and engage in premarital sex, all of which was illegal in the United Arab Emirates. If the local police ever found out what she was doing, she could face serious jail time. When they were finished with her, the broker gave her a paper bag with $9,000 in it, and she flew home to California. Story 21. This is going to attract a lot of criticism. I found an affordable pasta maker at an estate sale and included, "I make homemade pasta," in my dating bio. Most people have some eggs and flour at home, and you can create a filling or sauce from almost anything. If you feed someone enough pasta, they often fall asleep quickly. Very rarely did it progress to the next stage. I'm asexual, and 9 out of 10 times it didn't even lead to that conversation. I would wake up to my quiet watch alarm, shower, clean up, and leave. It was just me and my pasta maker. Story 22. I ran the whole gambit. I stripped at a gay bar, which sometimes earned me $100 per night in the early 2000s. Internet pornography paid $500 or more, and hooking was related to the stripping gig. Sometimes a client would even feed me and let me bathe at their house. If you went to McDonald's around 10:30 a.m., you could sit in the parking lot and wait for the kitchen staff to take out the garbage. This was back when sandwiches were pre-made and sitting under heat lamps. They'd be perfectly fine and sometimes even hot. If you were lucky, you might find a large breakfast foam clamshell to store your sausage patties for later. Grocery stores pitch all kinds of good food too. After making your rounds at McDonald's, you could go through the grocery store next door. Eventually, through hooking and trash picking, you saved up enough to buy a 20-year-old pickup truck for $500. It even had a topper to protect you from the weather and provide a place to stay and keep your belongings dry. You realized you couldn't afford the prescription amphetamines your parents put you on to quiet you down, so you went off them cold turkey. Clarity came over you, and you used that pickup truck to get to a job cutting trees in the middle of winter. That job led to other jobs, better pickup trucks, your own place, and eventually a happy marriage with a 4-acre property and a classic car collection, with a house that will be paid off in 13 years. Story 23. I am currently sleeping in my pickup truck while working in heavy construction away from home. I refuse to spend my per diem on a hotel. This is not about poverty, but it is tough. Story 24. It made me think of myself as always being in poverty. Even when I am not in poverty, I still have financial anxiety about possibly returning to it one day. I seem like a cheapskate because I cannot bring myself to spend anything. Story 25. I stole from grocery stores for a year. I had peanut butter, jelly, and some chips in my sweater when I saw an old friend's mother who wanted to catch up. Thankfully, she couldn't tell and we can afford groceries now. Story 26. When I worked for Trader Joe's, I routinely handled the demo station. I often relied on demo station food for dinner since I couldn't afford groceries. Story 27. In middle school, I exchanged my very worn and now too small Payless shoes for the exact same pair in the next size up. I walked in, tried on the new pair, put my old shoes back in the box on the shelf, and walked out. Story 28. I am not sure I agree with the premise of this question. Actions taken due to poverty are never pathetic, and it is important to emphasize that. If a person is pushed to extremes by poverty, the shame lies with the society that allows a person to fall so low. It is not the impoverished individual who is pathetic. It is the rest of us. Story 29. I washed laundry in the bathtub because I couldn't afford to go to the laundromat. I ate only rice for a week because I needed medication, and I would choose gnawing hunger over constant panic attacks. I accepted a half sandwich from someone at work because I hadn't eaten anything but rice for a week. Story 30. Put 86 cents worth of gas in my car. The gas pump started to slow down when it was getting close to the amount I purchased. Story 31. I waited for my seatmate to fall asleep on the train so that I could drink some of their water. I was extremely dehydrated from being out in the sun all day and couldn't afford a bottle of water for myself. Story 32. I need to see a doctor because I have sleep apnea, high blood pressure, and I suspect I might have diabetes. Story 33. I would go to the counter at fast food restaurants I couldn't afford to eat at and ask for extra condiment packets. I would create a meal out of ketchup, mustard, and relish packets. Story 34. Pick food out of the work trash can after a big event. The catering staff always discards all the food from rich galas instead of leaving it for the overnight staff. It's only an hour or two old, so I have retrieved some to eat more than once. It is the only way I can experience the food that wealthy donors get to enjoy. To be honest, it's not that great. The meat is always tasteless. I guess it's just old food for rich people. However, the charcuterie plates are always amazing. Such a waste. Story 35. I was invited to a friend's party when I was around 10, and she saw me eating leftovers from her trash can. It was so embarrassing. She's a sweetheart, and I'm still friends with her to this day. Story 36. I used to pick up coins on the floor at my elementary school canteen. Then I would use that money to buy food. Kids dropped their money all the time because they were rushing in the queue for no reason. My family couldn't afford to give me lunch money or prepare lunch for me. I was 8. I could also pick up coins when the whole canteen was empty because I was selected for a free one-on-one education assistant program, which included around 1 hour of free time in between classes. So when everyone went home and I stayed, I would go to the canteen and find treasures. The uncle who made fries always noticed me and offered me free food that was supposed to be thrown out. I still think of him. I'm turning 22 this year. Story 37. I wouldn't say it's pathetic. It's more about needing to do this to feed my kids. In escorting, I provided the girlfriend experience, no sex, just nights out. I could never judge a woman or man for selling their body for those reasons. Family comes first. Story 38. I used to steal frequently, mainly food and medicine from Walmart. At my job, I occasionally took $20 from the register for gas. Once, I took $100 to avoid going into the negative in my bank account. The most disheartening act was eating the food we discarded because it was expired. I would place it in the trash and then take it to the trash room to dispose of it. But I ended up eating a sandwich before returning to work. Story 39. Nothing. Because there is nothing pathetic about pure survival mode. You have to do what you must do to survive. If it helps preserve you from dying, then it is not pathetic. It is necessary in order to live. Story 40. I took 2-week-old leftovers from the break room and reheated them. I took hearing aid batteries because I honestly did not have $12, and I was starting a new job the same day. My hearing aid was on its last battery. I took a lot of food. The pandemic was kind of hard. Story 41. I could only use my phone when it was connected to Wi-Fi because I could not afford the phone bill that month. Story 42. I grew up very poor and would invite myself over to my friends' houses for dinner several times a week so I could enjoy a proper meal. Story 43. The most unfortunate moment was stopping by a friend's house to hang out around dinner time because they had plenty of food and I didn't. I was in my 20s. Story 44. I was unemployed and desperately needed a job. I looked for work at a local pub. The manager saw my resume and recognized me as a regular from a few years prior. He gave it back and said, "You're a well-educated man. Keep looking, you need to make connections." Let me make a few phone calls. Come back next week. I later got an interview at an alarm company and switched careers. Story 45. I took some money from my boss to buy bread. The worst part is that my boss intentionally left some money on his table for me. He told me. Story 46. Visiting my friend's house, his mom gave me some beef jerky she made herself. I saved it for later. When I got home, I boiled it in water to make soup. Story 47. Let someone touch me inappropriately just to get by. It wasn't a situation where someone offered me money to sleep with them. It felt more like, I helped you, and you can't even have sex with me? You're so ungrateful. My own family wouldn't help me get on my feet when I was 18 to 20 years old. I didn't have any other options at the time. Story 48. I'm currently sleeping on a large pile of Amazon boxes collected from my housemate's shopping addiction. I can't afford a custom mattress, and the small stairway room I sleep in can't fit a regular bed frame. I made my own bed frame using milk crates I found in dumpsters behind the hospital and zip ties. I have a sheepskin mattress topper, but no mattress. So, I cut the boxes up and taped them together to create a mattress that fits in the corner. It's actually quite comfortable, but I need to rearrange the cardboard every week as it compresses. I sleep in the stairway room because I can't afford rent right now, so I moved out of the real bedroom, and my housemate uses it as a home office since he pays all of the rent and occupies all of the bedrooms. Story 49. Going through these replies, I relate to many of them. Not having access to running water, heat, or food alters your brain negatively due to the instinct for survival. Story 50. Living with people. Growing up, the only time my family and I had our own place was when I was born until I was around 10 and when I was 14. Throughout my life, we lived with others. I spent 3 years of my high school life living in one room with my mom and sister at my paternal grandmother's house. We were very cramped. The house was old and messy. My parents had already been divorced for years, so my mom was living with her ex-mother-in-law, which must have been strange for her. Living there was difficult. The oven didn't work, so we had to eat microwave food all the time. Now, don't get me wrong. I know it could have been worse. Now, as a married adult with 2 kids, we are still living with others. This has been the case for our entire marriage. 14 years with the in-laws. Again, I know it could be worse, but it is challenging. We have desperately wanted our own life, but everything is expensive. 2 of the colleges my husband attended closed down while he was enrolled, so he didn't finish either degree. I attended a school that was deteriorating as well. It was only a matter of time before it closed. During 3 of the 5 terms I attended, we didn't have a teacher and had to teach ourselves, which likely contributed to my failing a term twice before leaving. A series of unfortunate events has prevented us from getting on our feet. While we are still quite fortunate, it is still difficult. Story 51. There were about 2 years in high school when I had a broken tooth and no dental insurance. It was painful whenever anything hot, cold, or sweet touched it. Finally, my mom found a low-income dental van and got me an appointment because I was about to turn 18 and would become ineligible for assistance. Every dentist I've ever spoken to said I should have had a root canal, but this older dentist just filled it and sent me on my way. I've never had another problem with that tooth. I couldn't eat on that side for so long that the molars on the other side are a bit worn down. There was also a time when I was between paychecks and had no money, and my dogs were out of food. I made them a large batch of chicken, rice, and gravy with a couple of cans of soft dog food mixed in. It was the last meat in the freezer, and I ate ramen for 3 days until I got paid. It was a bit too desperate for comfort, but I refused to let my dogs go hungry. They both weigh 80 pounds, so that was barely enough to cover them for those 3 days. Story 52. I worked at a place that sold various food items, including pizza by the slice. There was often some pizza left during the overnight shift, usually having sat there for 10 to 12 hours. The crust was hard and unappetizing by then, but I could eat the cheese and toppings from the last couple of slices. It wasn't much, but it was free and warm. Some days I worked another job, making my schedule 11 p.m. to 4 p.m., so sometimes that was all I had to eat that day. The better part was that I would pick up drink cans and bottles from the parking lot. This place was a convenient stop for travelers, so there were always recyclables thrown in the parking lot and garbage cans. I would collect everything in my car and take it in whenever I had a trash bag full. I kept a little bit of the money for myself so I could buy an energy drink during the overnight shift. Story 53. I was pretty sure I had pneumonia. I couldn't afford even the cheap clinic, so I just kept going to work. Took a full month to recover. Story 54. Divide a vending machine bag of peanut M&Ms into the different colors. Orange, red for breakfast, red for lunch, brown for dinner. Feed my son rice for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 3 days in a row until he would not eat it anymore. Force the tube of toothpaste apart to get a few more days' worth of toothpaste. Story 55. I used to make mistakes when taking orders at my job and tell the manager I was stressed. I would also say I would handle throwing away the waste. It was my lunch, and the staff would often criticize me for making 1 or 2 mistakes each shift and for being a poor server. I just needed to eat. I also took food from the food bank where I volunteered. I'm not proud of it, but it helped me, and now I'm finishing my thesis on community work and cannot wait to give back to the community. Story 56. Back in 2015, I received a disorderly conduct charge from an assault. I was barred from being at home due to a situation with my stepfather. So I stayed 3 months at a shelter as part of a court order to avoid 6 months in jail. That experience humbled me quickly. Before I got a job as a gas station clerk, working overnight for $8.25 an hour in Florida. I received an offer to earn $20 by going to a store and purchasing an over-the-counter item that could only be bought a couple of times a month. I had to use my identification to obtain it. Later, I discovered that drug dealers would recruit people off the street to do this. They would combine it with other substances to make methamphetamine. I was not naive to the fact that whatever it was, I did not want any part of it. Story 57. I slept in the living room of my partner's best friend for about a year after I was laid off. We struggled to get back on our feet in our original city. So we moved across the country to stay with this friend and their partner. They were gracious and generous to us, and I am immensely grateful to them. I don't know what we would have done without their support. We have our own place now and are getting back on our feet. But we lived in a small space with all of our belongings in boxes for about a year. Being in the living room was challenging for all of us, and I'm thankful they are such good friends. We lost almost everything when I was laid off, and now we proudly own 6 pieces of furniture. Story 58. Accepting change from a homeless man, as I had lost my wallet and struggled to get by, was a humbling experience. I needed bus fare to get to a job that day. He saw me searching the parking lot for loose coins, and I was just a quarter short. Story 59. I have turned in all my loose change, including pennies, as well as bottles and cans to have money for food until my next payday. Story 60. I had to choose between eating and buying medication. Nothing hits harder than realizing that survival comes with a price tag. Story 61. Take showers with cold water in the winter. We grew up in a very poor area, and hot water was not available since we did not have electricity. I used to take cold showers in the dead of winter and am very thankful for my current life. Story 62. I would wait for people to finish their meals and eat the leftovers when I was homeless at the Berkeley food court. I took food from the grocery store. Using the restroom is never easy when you are without a home, but that's another story. Story 63. This was some time ago, but I collected and boiled the water that was dripping from my air conditioner, snow in the winter, and rain to clean my house, bathe, flush toilets, and cook. Eventually, I got a job at a gym and I was able to shower there. Story 64. Reading these stories makes me feel so sad. Life truly isn't fair. The Met Gala recently took place, and those individuals could never comprehend the struggles of the people in this Reddit thread. It is absolutely insane. Story 65. I don't feel that my situation was pathetic because I was just doing what needed to be done, and I have no shame about it. However, a week after my son was born, I received a massive hospital bill in the mail and freaked out. So, I called my boss and said I was coming back to work the next day. A couple of months later, I got a second job dancing at a club. I would go from my day job straight to the club 3 or 4 nights a week. The tips went towards diapers, formula, and other groceries, while my paycheck went towards bills and paying off medical debt. One thing that might be considered a bit pathetic is that several years before I became a mom, I worked at an ice cream shop and lived off dollar menu items from a fast food restaurant. I could afford 2 cheeseburgers a day, and that was all I ate. Obviously, that wasn't enough, so I frequently stole ice cream from my job. It wasn't great in nutritional value, but calories were calories. Story 66. I was hitchhiking between Adelaide and Melbourne and got stuck in the town of Ballarat, Australia, at 8 o'clock at night during a big thunderstorm. It was really cold, and I didn't have any money or a way to pay for accommodations. I considered going to the police station to ask if they could put me in a cell for the night to avoid freezing to death. The Ballarat police informed me that there was a hostel down the street, which I thought was a youth hostel. I walked down there and discovered it was actually a men's homeless shelter. They welcomed me, offered me some soup, and I ended up staying in a room. The experience was wonderful and welcoming, completely different from what I expected. In the end, I spent a night in a homeless shelter, which I initially saw as an accident and a misunderstanding. I was grateful not to have to sleep in a cold police cell or on the side of the road under a bridge in the freezing rain. Story 67. I used to steal instant noodles from a convenience store. I felt sad because I had done something wrong, and it was not who I was. I ate a pack of instant noodles for 3 meals along with a lot of water. I also used to steal money from a wealthier relative. He never noticed, but I always felt guilty. I grew up in a very poor family, where all the money earned was put into education, and I was often starving. My dad never cared about the family. He was unemployed, lived off my mom's money, and was an alcoholic. My mom invested all her earnings into our education. I used the stolen money for food or essential items until my sister and I could get the best grades and live to make our mom proud. Story 68. Back in junior high, my cousin and I used to have a box where we pooled our money to buy games for my PlayStation 3 and play them together. At one point, my mother didn't have any lunch money to provide for me, so I stole money from our savings box until it was empty. My cousin wondered what happened to our money, but I played dumb until we grew older and he forgot about it. Years later, I bought some games for him on Steam because I felt generous and thought he deserved to have fun too. Subconsciously, it was also a way of making it up to him. Story 69. I pretended to be a hotel guest to gain access to the free breakfast and took as much as I could without drawing too much attention. I went to fast food restaurants and lied about my order being incorrect to get free food. I used low-quality toilet paper as pads. I was 13, and my parents were neglectful. Story 70. Growing up, my mom had $2 and some change to buy gas. We arrived with "The Lion Sleeps Tonight" playing loudly. When my mom went to pay for the gas, the cashier offered her $20 if she sang the song. At that moment, it was kind of cute and we all laughed about it. I was 6 years old at the time. My mom is a very animated person, and she really got into it. However, the situation looks different when you think about it more deeply. Story 71. Regularly sell clothes to Plato's Closet until they eventually buy everything. Create fake emails and phone numbers for Panera's Sip Club free trial. Drive for Uber Eats. Story 72. In the restaurant, I sometimes eat food from other people's plates in the walkway while taking items to the back. I wouldn't do this with everyone's plate, but generally, if there are things I know are tasty and I feel confident they are untouched, I'll enjoy them on the walk to the back. Story 73. This isn't on the same level as many of these comments, but I can fix almost anything in my house right now. Dryer broken? I can handle it. Stuffed animal joint tear? I can sew that. Garbage disposal acting up? No problem. Whatever it is, I can most likely take care of it. Story 74. When I was 14, I was homeless because I ran away from my stepfather, who was about to harm me. I had to steal leftover food from outside markets when the sellers weren't looking. I was beaten frequently for doing that with no way to heal properly, and I still had to sleep outside, facing all the associated risks. When winter arrived, I was so cold and sad that I accepted the offer of a former classmate to be his companion, just to have a roof over my head. Story 75. I found a Rice Krispies treat on the ground by an elementary school. It was homemade and, being near Valentine's Day, had little heart candies in it. Someone had stepped on it, creating a small hole in the Ziploc bag. I was walking to the center of town just after the kids went home, so someone must have dropped it. I had been praying for food, as I worked a night job but had nowhere to sleep during the winter in New Hampshire. I had been walking quickly, with my head down against the wind, having tunnel vision from my hat and scarf, weak from hunger, and focusing on where I was walking in the slush when I stumbled upon the Ziploc bag. I couldn't believe my eyes at first and bent down to pick it up. The sentiment of hearts was ironic. A Valentine homemade treat that wasn't meant for me. Some mom made this for her child, who must have dropped it while getting to their bus across the street, and it got trampled. I had food insecurity and felt grateful, but I cried as I ate it. There were many emotions in all directions. It was amazing. It saved me from digging through random trash cans that day. Story 76. I washed my dishes in the bathtub because my sink was broken and I couldn't get it fixed. I have not liked people in the past because their lives seemed to be easier than mine, but I'm trying to work on that. Despite everything, I am blessed, especially to have healthy children. Story 77. I went to school in sandals in the middle of winter, and I also didn't have socks. Nobody questioned it except for other students, but since they were around 6 years old at the time, they didn't question me either after I mentioned that I wanted this. I didn't really want to. At least I still have my toes, so that's good, I guess. Story 78. I took toilet paper from the school bathrooms. There were units that held 2 large rolls in high-traffic areas, so I would check them regularly. If there were 2 rolls, one would be for me and one for those in need. I would never leave it empty. Whenever I had the chance, I would also take a roll from the cleaning staff's carts. Additionally, I would take an extra container of food from lunch to have for dinner later. Story 79. Life can be difficult, and I realize that I take a lot for granted. It makes me feel sad to read all these responses. I will strive to improve. Story 80. I volunteered to harm people I had never met in their own homeland, at the request of a foreign country where I have never lived. After this, we were labeled as a national security threat by the country for which we risked our lives, only to be betrayed as they exploited our economy for their own greed. Being a soldier is disheartening on a good day. Fighting in America's wars feels like the lowest of the low. I was afraid of being homeless. I was hidden homeless and couch surfing. I hope I can be forgiven for my weakness. Story 81. I pawned the jewelry my father gave me, so I could pay for daycare and work to provide a home for my baby. Since my father passed away, I have nothing left of his except for a fishing pole. I wish I didn't have to pawn that jewelry, but the divorce and custody court process is so slow that I couldn't get any help. It turns out that I made too much money for any assistance but not enough to get by. It's a strange system where you can pay taxes for years, but if you need a little help, you can't receive it. Story 82. Ask parents for money. There is nothing more embarrassing than asking your parents for money as an adult. It is the most shameful thing you could possibly do if you are trying to be taken seriously by others. Story 83. Eating moldy rice that my mother discarded due to mold on it. I was very hungry, but my mother didn't have enough food, making it difficult for her to throw out what little we had. Story 84. Get as much use out of toilet paper as possible. Never use more than 4 squares for urination. When I had to wipe, I would use 4 squares, wipe, unravel, and fold the paper the other way to use the clean side and wipe again. This method only works with good quality toilet paper, which I was able to get because my mom was giving me half of her Costco toilet paper when she bought some. I sometimes still catch myself doing it even though I'm financially stable now. Old habits die hard. A couple of years prior to that, when I was working as a custodian at my local hospital, I would sneak home trash bags, cleaning rags, and that terrible thin toilet paper. I'm not proud of that, but I was barely getting any hours, and with bills and school to pay for, I didn't have much choice. Story 85. I received $30 from a stranger who saw my post asking how to make shampoo and conditioner because I could no longer afford it. After he offered to help, I felt too ashamed to just accept the money without doing something in return, so I asked if I could draw something for him. He requested a drawing of a piano. I had never drawn a piano before or created art for someone else, but I tried my best, although it turned out to be an ugly drawing. I am very thankful to him and others like him because they helped me through my toughest times. I am now in a much better place. Story 86. I used to open other kids' lockers at school and steal food. I convinced myself that if I took something valuable from them, then I was tough and not just a hungry loser. I would have been eligible for free school meals, but I was too ashamed to tell anyone what was really happening. My mother, who had made me homeless, was really good at spinning a story to make everyone think I was just spoiled. Story 87. I wasn't really forced to, I guess, but we lived in a garage for about a year when I was a kid. I didn't know any better, although it was kind of cold. Story 88. Stash leftovers at the end of the night at work, eat once a day, and use dish soap for everything including laundry, showering, and cleaning because it is cheaper. Save coffee that would be discarded at the end of the shift to take home and use for the week. Fill my water jug at work and get a bag of ice. Story 89. Ruin every day by not getting enough sleep the night before due to the stress of how to earn money and what to do to get out of the situation. Story 90. Bagged manure in the snow was located at the back of a stable for 10 horses. It was approximately 25 years old, about 2 meters deep, and the size of a small parking lot, priced at 50 pence per bag. Story 91. Stay in it. I have health issues, some mental and some physical. I've had 2 surgeries and several doctor visits in the last year and a half, not to mention all the medications I've been on and off. I'm still not where I need to be. Because of this, I can't work much. In order to get the treatment I need, I have to remain in poverty to stay on Medicaid. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to afford most of it and also afford to live. So I have to stay financially strained and live with my also financially strained mother to avoid an early death. This isn't just a critique of the inadequate American healthcare system. It's also a critique of the economy, job market, education system, and lack of paid leave. The whole system is flawed, and I've been left behind. I have to stay broke just to stay alive. How wrong is that? Story 92. For most of my 20s, I used the same sheet of aluminum foil to cook with repeatedly for months. Story 93. My friend and I looked enough alike that I borrowed his driver's license and used it to sell my plasma and blood for groceries. Story 94. Butter and salt sandwiches for meals for days to afford rent and sleeping on the floor for a year. I am grateful for everything I have now. Story 95. I ate plain rice with bugs in it because I could not afford anything else and was close to passing out from hunger. When I boiled the rice, the bugs floated to the top and I scooped them out, but I think their excrement was still present. Tasted like ammonia. I finished it. Story 96. As a child in the early 90s, I would look around on the ground for copper pennies dropped by other kids to gather the 30 pence needed to buy a portion of chips from the school canteen for lunch. Story 97. I definitely scavenged for food for a while. It stretched the groceries I actually bought so that we could manage, and the money from work and donating plasma went towards bills, rent, and groceries. I clung to my music subscription as my lifeline in an ocean of things I cut out of my life to survive. Looking back at that time, I feel sad and ashamed. It was the hardest I've fought to keep things afloat. While my former best friend and roommate was throwing tantrums over chocolate-covered almonds, and the 1 month I had to wait a few days to renew her online game subscription. Pay attention to how people are acting now. Don't let years of friendship fool you into thinking they are still good if they treat you poorly. You'd be amazed at how much they can affect your life. Story 98. I reused menstrual pads. I washed and dried them while I was in college. I was a starving artist in the literal sense. It's difficult to find a private place to dry them without looking unusual. Story 99. I ate oatmeal for a week and cried when my mom gave me some money that I didn't ask for. As a man in my late 20s, that was a bit rough. Story 100. I didn't have utensils for food for a long time and would fashion makeshift spoons from folded tin foil. Thankfully, I never had to live on the streets, but I definitely brought the street life into my apartment. Story 101. I grew up poor. We used magazines or newspapers as toilet paper. We couldn't afford toothpaste, so we put salt on our toothbrushes. We couldn't afford shampoo, so we only used bar soap. We used thread as floss. I am in a much better position now, but I still remain resourceful. Story 102. Eat rice with dried herbs and salt for many days of the month for lunch and dinner. Occasionally, I would get a little fancy and have the chance to add some expired sour cream to my meal. Then I decided to become a stripper. Story 103. I would like to reframe the idea of pathetic. I understand the point of this post, and I appreciate it. My intention is to offer an alternative perspective for individuals regarding themselves and their circumstances. Engaging in these actions is not pathetic. It is actually incredibly resourceful and intelligent. It demonstrates adaptability and initiative, two behavioral traits that are essential for survival and highly valued by employers. Story 104. I used wadded-up paper towels from work for menstrual pads when my two oldest children were very young. I was 19 and working two full-time certified nursing assistant jobs for $6.75 per hour, and I simply had nothing left after paying rent, utilities, gas, diapers, and groceries for the kids. I also ate whatever food in trays the residents had refused. I was mortified one night when I got off at 11 p.m. and a family member who had observed me eating anything I could find met me in the parking lot with several bags of groceries, laundry and cleaning supplies, diapers and wipes, toilet paper, and jumbo-sized packages of pads and tampons. I cried like a baby in her arms and couldn't even say thank you because I was so overwhelmed that she even cared. That event remains the single nicest thing another person has ever done for me. I needed the help but was too stubborn and prideful to ask anyone. I truly hope Miss Trish has lived her best life. I know I have, and I pay her kindness and generosity forward every single chance I get. One spark can start a fire that changes the world for countless people. She was my spark, and I will always be grateful. Story 105. I moved back in with my mother because I, a 52-year-old man, just can't afford even a rented room. My stepfather still makes me pay rent, so I give $500 a month. My disability check is only $1,000 each month. After living independently around the world from ages 17 to 49, this situation is a real hit to my mental and emotional well-being. Story 106. It is not a significant action, but smoking a cigarette for warmth is the most disappointing thing I have ever done, because it does not work at all. Story 107. When I was in high school and struggling financially, I took rolls of toilet paper to bring home because I could not afford it. Story 108. I would take home pizzas that were never picked up from work. They would be sitting in a warmer for over 9 hours. They tasted terrible, but they were better than nothing. I also worked over 30 hours as a minor to help make my mom's mortgage payment. Story 109. I took food from a delivery meant for a community kitchen. At the time, I was quite ill and felt deeply ashamed of my actions. I had run out of food and had been eating only one meal a day for months, which provided very little nutrition. I couldn't go to the grocery store due to my condition and a lack of money. Almost all of my funds went toward rent. I instantly regretted stealing. No situation or circumstance can justify it. True hunger can lead people to make desperate choices. Story 110. I used to take toilet paper from store bathrooms. I became skilled at opening the toilet paper roll holder and taking it all. Sometimes I found places that didn't secure their rolls, so I targeted them frequently. There was a toy store a couple of miles away that used regular toilet paper and didn't lock it up, so I took a lot from there. You have to do what you have to do. Story 111. I didn't eat food in the house so my wife and kids could eat. I washed my greasy clothes in a hotel bathtub when I first started in the oil fields because I couldn't afford the laundromat. Story 112. Live in a condemned building with no electricity, water, or heat during the winter in Michigan. There are holes in the walls and plastic sheeting over the windows. We built fires in the basement for heat and left the basement door open to act as a chimney. Story 113. Last year, I lost my license due to driving under the influence and a high-paying oil job. I broke several traffic laws and had a difficult roommate who brought a dog. He not only casually used drugs in my living room but also had legal issues and lied to a judge. I almost lost a 16-year friendship because he stole a car for weeks and accused me of using drugs. I eventually got my car back, but it was trash and filled with drug paraphernalia and garbage. I racked up $20,000 in credit card debt to get by. I then kicked both of them out because neither paid rent. I took on two jobs, one at a liquor store and the other at a sandwich shop, and later secured a job with Medicare. Now, I am installing an ignition interlock device in my car and starting a factory job that pays about the same as my previous oil company position. I'm also working overnight shifts at a local gas station. I now have a great roommate who doesn't use drugs and pays rent on time, and I am slowly paying back my debt at manageable levels. Story 114. I feel emotionally cold. I have become nomadic and enjoy life alone. When people ask questions, I remain silent. It is nobody's business. Story 115. I sold plasma and forged registration stickers to put on my license plate so I could drive to work. I received a ticket for not having insurance but got away with the forged tag. Later, I bicycled 10 miles to a pawn shop and sold every DVD I owned. It is expensive being poor. Story 116. I spent many nights alone riding the train, struggling to sleep between arrivals and making sure to move if the atmosphere felt off. Being kicked off because they finished running was an experience I do not miss at all. Story 117. I remember donating blood once to get $30 to survive until my next paycheck. I used to live on noodles. Story 118. When I was young, I had an apartment that I could afford. However, I left the heating off and slept in my clothes during the winter, taking cold showers. I had no television, so I took long walks for entertainment. I had to find the cheapest food. Fortunately, I found a job after a while and have been making progress ever since. You should see my house now. Story 119. I used to steal from the school canteen because I knew I would be going home to no food. The cashier caught me one time but let me keep it. Story 120. When I was around 19 or 20, I barely had enough money to pay my rent and bills, so I didn't eat much. I usually survived on free snacks at work, which offered very low pay, and only ate rice at home. I have also taken toilet paper from school and salt and pepper from McDonald's. Story 121. I ate hot dogs for a month and hid an extra one between the other two. I had one meal a day, costing $4 paid in quarters. Story 122. I couldn't afford to replace my shampoo, so I used dog shampoo because that was all I had for a week. To add insult to injury, at the time I was a 21-year-old poorly paid assistant at a fancy salon, and I had just moved to a big city, so all my money went to rent, food, and dog care. I also wasn't allowed to get my hair washed at the salon unless I was getting it cut or colored. In hindsight, that place was terrible, and I'm glad they went out of business. Story 123. Bathed using water collected in bottles. Took toilet paper from work and other public restrooms. And when working at restaurants, I would eat leftover pieces of food before they were thrown out. Story 124. I have been eating spaghetti and yellow mustard for 3 weeks because they are the last items left in my cupboard. Story 125. Walking the streets to find enough coins to buy a pack of rolling papers, and then searching for discarded cigarette butts to empty the tobacco from was a part of my past. This was many years ago. I was lost and essentially homeless. Searching for discarded cigarette butts is the most shameful thing I did during that time. I stole food from my delivery job, but I don't feel as ashamed of that. Things are so different now. I'm married, I own a home, and I have a child. We have 2 cars and savings. I definitely do not smoke. Sometimes, when I look back, I don't recognize the person I was. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.